Hi guys, welcome to Man Talk TV. This is Franco from Suited Up Manila. Today, we are going to be speaking with one of the best legal experts in labor law and immigration, Attorney Kester Kua from the C. Kua Yung law firm, also known as the Sky Law. Hi, Kester.
Hi, Franco. Thank you for having me.
I'd like to ask you if you could share a little on the background about Sky Law and the legal expertise you do in your field.
Okay, so Skylaw was founded by me and my partners after we left the big firms. No, it's
Yes.
actually a full-service law firm. We're a very small full-service law firm located in Ortigas, and we handle all fields of law. So labor, intellectual property, tax, corporate law. We handle all of these. Personally, I handle labor and immigration.
You mentioned in one of your labor advisories online about contract negotiation. Could you discuss that with us further, as well as is this pandemic, COVID pandemic, considered force majeure?
Okay. That's a very good question, no? Because right now, the first thing that I would recommend all business owners to do is to really start renegotiating your contracts. Why? Simply because the issue or the concept of force majeure is not something that will automatically apply to our
Okay.
obligations. Okay, I want to make that clear to all business owners right now. The principle of force majeure is not something that will automatically apply to all of your business obligations. Why? What is the concept of force majeure in the first place? Okay,
Yes.
the concept of force majeure, okay, or fortuitous event, basically requires that it is physically or legally impossible for one party to comply with his or her obligation. Okay, physical
Okay.
or legal impossibility is the requirement. So if it is not physically or legally impossible for you to comply with your requirement, then actually the concept of force majeure might not apply. Okay.
Okay.
Secondly, you also have to take a look at your contracts. Why? Because the concept of force majeure might actually be excluded by your own contract obligations.
I
Okay.
see.
It's possible that in your own contracts, it was already written in that force majeure will not be applicable. Okay. As
Okay.
an exception. So that's why I feel like a lot of business owners are thinking that worst case scenario, they can claim force majeure. Okay.
Yes.
And to a certain extent, maybe, but
Okay.
again, it's not a blanket. It's not a blanket exemption. It will be on a case-to-case, contract-to-contract basis.
In your mind,
So
is there? I mean, could you give an example of a force majeure that would be like possible? Yet, you mentioned earlier that it's quite. It should be impossible for you to conduct such, no. So, but like now, are there? What are the possibilities? I
so
mean,
for
what?
example, yes, for example, you have a contract or you have an obligation to deliver a certain
Yes.
item within the ECQ period.
Yes.
However, because of the government's ECQ regulations,
Yes.
you're not actually allowed to open your factory, your office, your workshop, so you're unable
Yes.
to deliver, right? In that case, in my opinion, that would be force majeure. So because it was
Okay.
legally impossible for you to comply with that obligation because
Yes.
your people are not allowed to come in. Movement was restricted. That's for me, in my opinion, that's a very classic case of force majeure. There may be
Okay.
others, of course, but it will
Yes.
really be taken on a case-to-case basis.
Okay. During this time, what would you advise businesses, especially that the lockdown is set to expire? What do you advise that businesses or entrepreneurs or businessmen, what should they be doing at this point in time before we start going back to work?
Okay, for the business community, three main things that I would really recommend you to start doing now. Okay. By the way, my family, we have our own business, and
Yes.
so I understand where business people are coming from. Okay. First thing you should do, as I mentioned earlier, is to renegotiate your contract obligations right now. Okay. Especially for those that have rental obligations. Okay. For those with rental obligations, as of now, the government has not issued any advisory waiving rentals. Okay, so it is not
Okay.
mandatory on the part of lessors to waive rentals. So right now, I would recommend everyone to start renegotiating their contracts. If you have deliverables, if you have payments to be made, renegotiate them right now. Don't wait
Yes.
until the last minute because then you're giving the other party very limited time to react. And
Correct.
when the other party is given a limited time to react, it becomes more likely that they will simply say no to your request. As
Yes.
opposed to if you give them time, maybe they can arrange their own obligations, rearrange their own
Correct.
obligations. So first really is to renegotiate your contracts. Second, for all businessmen out there, all business people out there, the name of the game after the ECQ is really cash flow. Okay,
Correct.
as
Liquidity.
businesses, yes, liquidity, cash flow, that's the lifeblood of our business, of our enterprise. You have to start preserving cash flow right now. Cut off any unnecessary expense, find financing, find capitalization if needed. For the small enterprises out there, the government through the DTI has a program where they can give out loans. I think
Yes.
maximum of 500,000 pesos at very, very good terms. And in fact, I believe the monthly interest there is only 0.5%. Which,
Okay.
given this financial difficulty, this epidemic, no, is actually quite a good rate already,
Correct.
and very minimal collateral, if ever, will be required. So for the small enterprises, I would recommend
Yes.
you really to look into these programs. Now, for the medium and big-sized corporations out there, we really have to start renegotiating our bank terms, no, our bank
Correct.
loans, the terms and conditions. Um, Unfortunately, well, actually, we know that the BSP has already cut the rates. Okay,
Yes.
however, whether or not that will reflect to the commercial rates is another
Yes.
question. And I
Correct.
understand that some people are finding it hard to secure additional financing at this point. So if you have a
Correct.
good relationship with your bank, I suggest you start negotiating now.
So are they
So that
Attorney Kester, are they going to be negotiating the rate of interest as well as the term, or I mean, is it both or just one of each?
I would suggest both. Obviously, if you already have a loan, there are already terms and conditions there, no?
Yes.
Now, I do know that some of our clients were able to renegotiate those terms and conditions. Okay, so although as a general rule, the banks are reluctant to do so. However, given the
Yes.
situation now, I think many are more than willing
Correct.
to renegotiate and see what's
Yes.
a good middle ground for both parties. Because to be fair to the banks, they don't really want your collateral. Although
Yes.
we know many loans are secured by collateral. The
Correct.
truth is, many of them don't want the collateral anyway
Yes.
because they also need cash flow.
And they like the
So
interest
yeah,
payment.
yes, and they
Correct.
know that if too many people fail, then more of their clients will fail. So it's all connected. So really,
Correct.
second, the thing that I would recommend everyone to do: start preserving cash flow, reduce expenses as much as possible. Okay. Then the
Yes.
third suggestion for all business owners right now is really to sit down, take time, evaluate your manpower requirements, and start planning. Okay. The sad truth is many businesses are affected. Okay. Many
Correct.
people will really have to lessen their cost and lessen their manpower requirements.
Yes.
So yeah, you have to really sit down and look at your requirements and then face the truth. Start planning now. It's always better to start planning now than later.
What are the options and what are the things that we can do to kind of help our employees during this lockdown?
Okay, that's a very, very good question, and something I think is very important, no, Franco. First, first thing that all business all businesses can do is,
Yes.
if you haven't, is to issue out the earned 13th month leave, 13th month
Okay.
pay and leaves of the employees. Okay,
Yes.
so we're already into May. Maybe you can already issue out a portion of the 13th month leave and then 13th month pay and whatever leaves they've earned, just
Correct.
so that they already have money to spend. Okay, and
Yes.
at the same time, you're also lessening your liabilities in the future,
Yes.
because anyways, you have to pay this at the end of the year. Worst case scenario. So you're hitting two birds with one stone. No, the
Correct.
second thing, of course, businesses can do is to give out loans. Now, for
Yes.
loans, just make sure that it is clear to the employees that it is a loan. Okay?
Okay.
Because I
Yes.
know many people, of course, right now we can't do the regular workflow or the regular flow where we ask our employees to sign
Yes.
the loan agreement, right? So right now, if you can't do that, then at the very least, make it clear to them that this is a loan, either through a text message or through an
Yes.
email or a formal
Like a
memorandum.
calamity loan. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Just make it clear to them that it is a loan and that this has to be repaid through salary
Yes.
deduction or whatever means at your disposal. Okay. The third method or the third way that you can assist your employees is, of course, giving out financial assistance if
Okay.
the company is able to. Okay.
Yes.
Now, for financial assistance, my recommendation is to be careful with how you give out the financial assistance. Okay, I'm not saying don't. In fact, what I'm saying, just to be clear with everyone, is
Yes.
if company is able, please do. However, just be careful with financial assistance because please take into consideration the principle of company practice. Okay, now for company practice, it's basically a principle wherein if a certain benefit was continuously, uniformly, and unconditionally given to an employee or to employees, then there might come a time where it becomes demandable on the part of the employees. In other
Correct.
words, if you continuously, uniformly, and unconditionally give out a certain benefit, in this case, financial assistance to your employees for a certain amount of time,
Yes.
um, there might come a time that the employees can actually demand this as a matter of right. And if you don't give it to them, they can actually sue you. Okay. Now the
Yes.
thing is, again, those three requirements: uniformly, continuously, and unconditionally. So my
Correct.
suggestion is, whenever you're going to give financial assistance, make sure it is clear that it is clear on why it's being given. And the reason should
Yes.
be, number one, because the company is financially able to do so. And second, because of the epidemic, the COVID-19 epidemic right now and the
Correct.
quarantine. Yeah.
And to highlight to them
So,
that it's a one-time benefit.
yes, exactly. That it's a one-time benefit out of the generosity or goodwill of the company. Just so that there's no misunderstanding.
Yes.
I'm not
Yes.
saying
Of
that
course.
right? Just so that there's no misunderstanding between the company and the employee.
Definitely, it has to be clear because we do not want to get in trouble in the future. We are just trying to be able to help in any best way that we can. So definitely, the three options that you mentioned are are to be considered by those who are in the management, especially for small and medium enterprises who are unable to give out their full salary during the ECQ. Another question that we have, Kester, is about SMEs who may need to scale down at this time. Uh, SMEs may not have the liquidity to be able to retain most, if not all, of their employees. So, could you give us some legal advice as to the options that they can have at this time?
Okay, so we have several options for scaling down, no? And in fact,
Yes,
it will apply to all businesses naman. First one, and the most drastic, honestly, is retrenchment. Okay, this is the most drastic
yes,
because you're permanently terminating the employee. Okay, now for
correct,
retrenchment, you have to inform both the Department of Labor and the employee 30 days before the effective date of retrenchment. Okay, and for
correct.
retrenchment, we have to pay separation pay. Okay, now separation pay is normally 1/2 month pay per year of service, or at a minimum of 1 month pay. But take note,
Okay,
this computation is for retrenchment.
yes,
And the retrenchment is only allowed if the company is suffering financial losses. Okay,
okay.
or at the very least that there is a credible threat of financial loss on the part of the company.
So,
Okay,
like now
so
that we
that's
have
the
COVID,
yes.
is that a valid threat?
Yes, it's a valid threat, but the problem with the condition of threat is it must be proven. Okay, so it
Okay.
must be proven, and normally we prove this through audited financial statements.
How will the financial statements be presented if right now we are currently in the midst of it and the financial statements will not yet reflect the losses that we are going to be incurring?
Yes. So actually, the audited financial statements need not be prepared right now, or need not be prepared when the employee is being terminated. Okay,
Okay.
you will probably need it if and when, if or when, sorry, an employee files suit against you. Okay, if an employee disagrees with the decision, Of course, it is their right to file a case against their employer, and it is there that you will now need your audited financial statements to prove that you really were suffering losses, no? And
Correct.
ideally, I would also recommend, because the Department of Labor also requires it, by the way, is after a reasonable period of time, from
Yes,
the time that you retrench the employee, that you provide the Department of Labor a copy of your audited financial statements.
I see.
So it doesn't need to be done right now. But once everything starts to normalize, you can have your accounting firm draft up an interim audited financial statement. So you don't need to wait for the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, yes. And then what else were the other options that
Yes.
you were
Okay,
going to
so the
discuss?
retrenchment is the most drastic. Okay, second would be temporary layoff, which is basically you're laying off the employee for a maximum period of 6 months. Okay, the requirements are basically the same as retrenchment. Um, notice is also required, but it's only for a maximum period of 6 months. Now, if within that 6 month period you are able to normalize your operations, you can have the employee come back. If you are unable to normalize operations or
Yes.
continue operations after the 6 month period, then we will have to pay the employee separation pay. Next would be forced leaves. Okay, according to Labor Advisory 09-20, actually, the
Yes.
Department of Labor, in recognition of the COVID-19 pandemic or epidemic, gave out an option or options to employers, which they called flexible working arrangements. Okay, and one
Okay.
of these flexible working arrangements is actually forced leaves. Okay, where the employer may place their employees under forced leave, and
Okay.
then pay out any remaining leave credits if there are any available. If not, then
Yes.
none. The thing though with forced leaves is I would not recommend this as much to my clients unless this is the
Okay.
only solution
Option.
left.
Yes.
Why? Because we don't know, the Department of Labor was not able or did not specify how long a forced leave is allowed. Okay, and I
Okay.
am afraid that if it goes on too long, let's say for a few months, the
Yes.
employees might feel that they were actually terminated and not just
Yes.
placed on
Or
forced leave.
abandoned. Yeah.
Yes, or abandoned, because for forced leave you're just placing them on leave, eh. And the we're dealing with people here. Okay,
Correct.
they have their own families to protect. They have their own livelihoods to be concerned about, and confusion and uncertainty is the main problem here. Really,
Yes.
confusion and uncertainty.
Yes.
So that's why I do not recommend forced leaves as much, only
Yes.
when we have no other option. Okay. Now, fourth option, which I would highly recommend
Yes.
to employers, is the reduction of work hours. Okay.
Okay.
Instead of placing employees on forced leave or even retrenching them or terminating them or laying them off temporarily, what I would recommend is actually, if possible, reduce their work hours or work days instead.
Okay.
Okay. So if normally they work 6 days a week or five
Yes.
days a week, maybe we can cut that down to 3 or 4 days, or maybe even two or
Okay.
three days
Is
in
there
a
any
week.
limitation to that, Kester?
Right now, there's none. Okay, but remember, everything that we do must be done in good faith. Okay, so as long as it is done in good faith, it should be it is allowed. There's no limit right now. There's no official limit. Just make sure it is being done in good faith. Because why is this even allowed? It's a flexible working arrangement, as mentioned
Yes.
in Labor Advisory 09-20, and the reasoning or the spirit behind allowing these FWAs, no, is to reduce the number of employees who will go unemployed, who will become unemployed. So the
Correct.
Department of Labor will prefer that people work less, earn a little bit less on the whole, but at least they still have jobs. They still have something to bring home to their families. Okay.
Yes.
And the fifth
Are they sorry,
recommendation,
Kester?
yes,
Are they allowed to work or do part-time jobs while they are under like a flexible work schedule?
yes, they're allowed to.
The employees are
If
allowed
it
to.
is, yes. According to the Department of Labor, it's allowed. Now, of course, for individual companies, you may have your own rules on that. But at
Correct.
this point, if you decide to place your employees on reduced work hours, I would recommend that you allow them to do
Yes.
part-time work. on their free days to augment their
Correct.
income.
Yes, the laws.
But of course, you can make a rule that yes, they are allowed to do part-time work, but not to your direct competitors.
Correct.
That's allowed. Okay. Of course, we can put in reasonable limitations, and of
Yes.
course, working for your competitors is a no-no. Okay.
Yeah.
And now the last thing that I would recommend, and in fact, it's basically a derivative of the reduced work hours. No. Um, and what really I've been pushing to all my clients as much as possible is the rotation of workers. So it's similar
Okay.
to reduction of work hours,
Yes.
because everyone's hours will be reduced. Because what will happen is you're dividing your entire team or your entire manpower to
Yes.
several groups. So for example, you divide them into Team A and Team B. So Team A will come in Mondays to Wednesdays. Team B will
Yes.
come in Thursdays to Saturdays. That's called rotation of work hours, and that's allowed.
Okay.
In
Is it
fact,
still
yes.
allowed, Kester, for employers to select or handpick some employees who have critical functions that will not be part of those flexible work hours, but rather work daily, every day?
Yes, if yes, you can still pick out the skeletal workforce that has to be there every day. Just make sure that in selecting these people, you have clear criteria on on who is considered who is considered a skeletal workforce.
Correct.
Okay, just make sure the criteria is clear. Maybe it's because they have the technical aptitude for it. Maybe it's because they perform better on a day-to-day basis. Just make sure, or maybe they're the most senior, so they're the most experienced. It's up to the employer. Just make sure there's a reasonable criteria.
Correct.
So
Okay.
yeah, those are the things I would recommend.
You also mentioned one of your advice in your previous talks online about business continuity planning. I'm sure a lot of businesses have started or have had implemented these things, but maybe for those that have not yet considered, what is business continuity planning?
Okay, business continuity planning in its most basic sense or definition is really a plan on how your business will continue when scenarios change. Okay, so for BCPs, actually, it's not just a one single document or a one single plan,
Yes,
because you're actually supposed a good BCP would have different plans for different scenarios. Okay,
okay,
so that's what, in its most basic sense, okay, that's what a BCP is. And I really would recommend this for all businesses, even if you're small, even if you're just a small restaurant, or maybe you're a small convenience store. I would still recommend that you have a BCP. So what are the some things that you have to take into consideration in crafting your BCPs with
yes,
given the COVID-19 situation? No? First is I think businesses will have to consider decentralization. Okay, if anything, this coronavirus has taught us that globalization and centralization has its weaknesses. Okay, we've been riding that wave for such a long time, but if
yes,
anything, right now it has shown its weakness. Okay, so decentralization is key. If you're into production, try to decentralize your production. Make sure that each individual production center or production area is able to produce your final product independently of other
yes,
centers. Of course, the supply chain will follow in terms of decentralization. Get more suppliers, because one of the problems actually many industries faced when the ECQ was implemented, okay,
yes,
in the country, was they even though they were exempted industries, they suddenly found
correct,
themselves unable to produce because they had no suppliers.
yes,
Their suppliers were unable to really put in to get the workforce necessary to provide them their raw materials like packaging or
yes,
other raw materials. No, so that's the first thing, decentralization. Second, I would recommend is really to make sure you already have or you've already identified your skeletal workforce in your BCP. That in each and every department, you already identified exactly who is part of that skeletal
yes.
workforce.
The
Because
critical
again,
employees, yes,
yes, the critical employees. Why? Because again, what we learned, no, with this coronavirus was many companies were suddenly caught unaware, and it took them some time before they could operate. Okay,
Correct.
even though they were exempted industries, it took them
Yes.
some time because none of their employees were ready or willing to go back to work. Okay,
Correct.
some were willing but unable because they live far away. There
Yes.
were no means of transportation. Some were available but unwilling because they had small children, they had elderly in their workplace. So really, the
Correct.
first thing, sorry, not the first thing, but an important thing to consider for BCPs right now
Yes.
is to readily identify your capable skeletal workforce. And who are these people? These people will have to be those who have an independent source of transportation and those
Correct.
who are able to work in a magnitude of different scenarios. Yeah. And
Okay.
then lastly, for
Yes.
BCPs, and very, very important to all businesses really, is to consider your alternate sales channels. Okay.
Correct.
Obviously, e-commerce is an easy answer to that. And I don't know what other answers there are, but it's really right now, it seems to be the predominant answer, e-commerce.
Yes.
And if we look at countries, at the country actually that has the strongest e-commerce industry right now, which is China,
Yes.
uh, you notice that it's a country that has actually experienced a lot of epidemics, no? From
Yes.
SARS, then to all the avian flu viruses.
Correct. Yes.
In fact, in Hong Kong, e-commerce really spiked, or all their e-commerce platforms really began with SARS.
Yes.
And then they started growing steadily after SARS as people grew more comfortable with the platform. It
Yes.
grew and grew. So right now, if you're into retail, I suggest start, checking whether or not you can convert sales in e-commerce.
Definitely. And Kester, another question would be, is there any liability for businesses with regard to clients contracting the COVID virus in their establishments if ever it is proven or such?
Okay, um, that's a I would not I would say that's a gray area because so many factors have to be taken into consideration. But siguro just as a general guiding principle, okay, again,
Yes.
this is a gray area. Many factors will have to come into play. But as a general guiding principle for both employees and visitors in your own companies,
Yes.
as long as you follow the precautionary measures required
Correct.
by the Department of Health and the Department of
Yes.
Labor, you should be fine. Okay,
Okay.
as a general rule, liability will not attach, provided again, as a general rule, that you follow all those precautions. So I would recommend everyone to take a look at the precautionary measures being mandated by the
Correct.
Department of Labor and
Yes.
DOH.
Okay. Last question, Kester, would be: are there any advocacies that you would like to promote at this time, as well as, of course, we'd like to hear how they can get in touch with Skylo and how they can see the videos, very informative videos about legal advice.
Okay, so thank you really for this question, Franco. Personally, I really do have this advocacy, and this advocacy right now is
Yes.
I would like to ask everyone to share whatever information, whatever knowledge you have to other business owners, whether it is legal or maybe it is simply operational know-how that is not part of your company secrets, of course.
Correct.
Maybe some operational know-how that will help others to adapt better. I
Yes.
would highly encourage everyone to share all these information. Why? Because we're all in this together. That's the truth.
Correct.
Our economy is is circular in nature. Okay, if many people go bankrupt, if many businesses go under, if many people stop paying their obligations, sooner or later, in whatever industry you are, it will affect you because it's a chain. It's really a chain. No
Yes.
one is immune. Law firms are not immune. Retail is not immune. Manufacturing is not immune. Banking is not immune. No one is immune. So if there's
Correct.
my advocacy really right now is, if possible, as part of the business community, let's share whatever knowledge or know-how that we can share to others just to
Yes.
prevent a chain of bankruptcies. Now, for my firm, if you
Yes.
for that question, thank you again. No,
Yes.
if anyone's interested in our firm, you can send us a message through Facebook. You can just
Okay.
look it up, Sky Law Offices Philippines, or you can go to our website, Sky Law Philippines as well.
Yes.
And then we also we conduct weekly webinars
Yes.
for the public.
Okay.
It's done. We conduct it every Friday at 4 p.m.
Yes.
So if people are interested, you can go to our Facebook page or to our website to sign up.
Okay.
And then we do upload these webinars to YouTube
Yes.
in our
Okay.
own channel. So you can just look it up, Sky Law Philippines. We have a
Kylo.
channel
Okay.
there. Yes. We do upload it, although at after a certain period of time. So yeah, I just hope everyone can share and that all of us can get through this business problem, really, this economic problem together.
Ay, maraming salamat, Kester. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Maraming salamat din, Franco. Salamat. Thank you.